All right. Well, thank you guys for being here for another episode, just another incredible episode that I believe of the Journey to Freedom podcast. And I have so much fun doing this one because I get to meet so many different interesting men. And in this case, we started this one about a year and a half ago now, and it's Journey to Freedom. And it's been Black men that have just been able to tell our stories. And I don't believe, Michael, that I've had a beekeeper yet on the show. Now, I know my grandpa had a whole bunch of bees, and we would move him. He was in Central California. He had a dairy, and then we would have to go to another spot where he had all these bees. And I remember, I would go in there, and he would say, "Roll up the windows in the truck," and he would put in all the stuff, and he would smell, pull out the honey, and it was so fun as a kid being able to do that. But then you're talking about the rain, and I didn't understand that. He was telling me, like, I felt like I was listening to Bill Nye the Science Guy telling me about the pollen and, bees eating up their own honey. And then we don't get any of it, that they eat all of it. And, I knew a little bit about you want to have, my grandpa used to tell me that you want to have bees from the area in which you live in, because that helps you with the allergies from that area. Because if you get honey from, Michael lives in Florida. If I get honey from Florida and I go out and I'm rolling around in the grass in Colorado, it's not going to help me because it's a whole different allergy system and ecosystem. And so that was cool. But, Michael is also an author. And, I asked him before the show in our green room, like, what are you most excited about? And he said life. And that's such a great answer in this day and age where people are excited about getting up in the morning. And the things that they get to do and having good friends and having food on the table. And there's so many things that when you watch like our news or you watch the media, and they give this bleak picture every day of how bad our lives could be. We hear about, I had a guy, I went into the grocery store yesterday, and he was asking me, I guess he was trying to sell a newspaper. And what was funny is I'm like, newspaper? What's a newspaper? Because it's been so long since I personally have actually read a newspaper. And he was talking about the local paper. And I told him, I said, I haven't watched news in 15 years. And I haven't read a newspaper in at least 20 to 25 years. And he goes, well, don't you want to get it for $9.99 a month? We have this special. I'm like, I just said I haven't read a newspaper in 20 years, and I haven't watch the newscast in 15. Why would I want to start tomorrow? And he goes, well, because you need to know what's going on in order for you to act. And I'm like, do I need to know what's going on where? If you tell me what I need to know that's happening in Israel, I can't control what's happening in Israel. I mean, people are telling me, or if you tell me what's happening in Ukraine, or, even sometimes with, our president that we have, I'm like, I don't know how much of whatever he's saying I have the ability to control or implement in my life. And, if there's something that major comes out, I'm sure there's enough people who will tell me. But it was just so neat to have you, Michael, actually say, I'm just excited about life. Because I do talk to other folks that are around, and they're not excited because they're telling me that their life is over because of something that our president said, or something that, they think is going to happen, or AI is going to take over the world, or all these other things. And so thank you for sharing that. Now, I've asked Michael to tell a story. I told him it could be like I do all of our guests, start way back in the day. He's only 29 now. So, 29 years ago when he started life, and he could tell us all about that, or, wherever he wants in life. And so I can't wait to hear his story. We'll chop it up after that and have some more great conversation. Michael, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being patient with me. And we had some scheduling things that went on, and we've rescheduled a few times. And it's just so neat to have people that are willing to say, hey, I get it. That's life. I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to be angry. We'll get this done eventually. And so I appreciate you for who you are and what you do. And please go ahead and take the floor now, share your story, and we'll just kind of talk after that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me here today. And my answer about life, listen, I have a choice. I can be happy about, my life and where I'm going, or I can be unhappy about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but I'm going to acknowledge, so I have a choice about that. So
Mhm.
anyone who's choosing to be unhappy, that's their thing. It's not my thing. You also said I was the first beekeeper. I am probably going to be the first of a lot of things today that I'm going to talk about. And
Okay.
one of the themes I think in my life and growing up and through my adulthood is I have been the first in a lot of things that I've done. So I have done things that typically my people, so to speak, aren't that interested in doing. So I wound up having to do it alone, or the first one that looked like me doing it. Even as a child, even, me and my brothers were the only ones in the neighborhood who swam. So
Yes.
we all knew how to swim, and nobody else in the neighborhood did. Although everybody went to the YMCA, they had the summer program, but a lot of those kids would jump in the pool and they would just be splashing around in the pool. They didn't know how to swim. So we knew how to swim,
Hmm.
you know, in a very in a larger context of how I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. So I'm from a black community. Everyone in my black community, for the most part, not everyone, but a large portion went to Baptist church
Hmm.
or Pentecostal and, all of those kinds of churches.
Yeah.
But we were Episcopalian. So
Uh-oh.
we were the only one in the neighborhood that was Episcopalian, but our church was the largest black Episcopalian church in the United States.
Oh, wow.
So obviously there were other black people in my church,
Yeah.
but on some level in the neighborhood, I felt alone because I didn't go to the Baptist church or, those kinds of churches. My family's not from the South. So we never went down south in the summertime. So, there was a lot of differences growing up. Um, if just a little bit about my story. I come from a single parent household. My mother and father divorced when, I don't even remember my father living in the house. So it
Okay.
must have been, I think I was born when my mother was 19. So my
Okay.
father was gone by the time by the time my mother was 21 and I was 2 years old because I had a younger brother that was born
Okay.
18 months after me. And I think as a kid, I felt lonely, but it wasn't something that you could really talk. Okay, you're lonely. Who are you going to tell?
Yeah.
My mother worked. She was a nurse, so she was working all the time. We were babysat or stayed with my grandparents who lived upstairs from us. But my grandfather was born 1898. My grandmother was born in 1902. So they were from a completely another world. And you just didn't go to them with problems. It was one of those families, stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. What's said in our house stays in our house. You know, there are poor children in China. So what do you got to complain about? So what we learned early on was to, keep it in within ourselves and not talk about it. So I had a life where my communication skills were limited. My fantasy life was large. And I did most things on my own. We were also raised to represent the Black community. So we always had to be good. So on the outside, I was good, but I was doing devious things kind of in the shadows. So what that did for me, or how it manifested itself in my life, was I wound up being very dishonest. Meaning, if you asked me a question, I would answer you, but I would always give you the right answer versus the honest answer. And that's just how I lived throughout my life. I got involved with drugs early on in life. No other reason other than curiosity. I was curious about what drugs did. I used them. I learned how to use them. So anytime I was feeling something, to enhance the feeling of excitement, I would use more drugs. To dampen the feeling of shame, hurt, and anger, I would do more drugs. So I never learned how to process my feelings in a healthy way. I always used drugs to do that, or food. I graduated high school. Throughout school, I was just a DC student. I never really did well in any school. I never really felt good about myself as a bright or a smart person. I was labeled as a slow learner. That's what they called it back then. My mother used to think I was deaf because I would daydream so deeply that when she would call me, I wouldn't answer because I'm fantasizing about something. And most of the things that I fantasized about were nature. That's what I was interested in. I wasn't interested in what the other kids in my neighborhood were interested in. I watched PBS, National Geographics, Mutual of Omaha, Wild Kingdom. Those were the shows that I watched, and that's what I was interested in. And on some level, I felt alienated or different from my peers because they were interested in other things. And as a young boy, other things that I misinterpreted. They were interested in black things, and I was interested in white things. And so I developed a negative kind of view of myself around not being black enough. And so there was always parts of me that I had to hide. I didn't want you to see my deficits, so I would have to cover them up. I always kept myself at a distance from others. I used humor, and I would get you before you got me. And usually my get you was something verbal. So how can I embarrass someone? I was judgmental, I was critical, but it was all these techniques that I used to protect myself. Long story short, I'm smoking crack. Now I'm a grown-up smoking crack. I had the bright idea. I used to work at the post office, and I was making, this was in the early 80s, and I was making about $28,000 a year. That was good money back then. So I figured out what my drug problem was. I made too much money. So what I did was I marched down to the post office and I said, I quit. Well, why are you leaving? Well, because I got a drug problem, and if I didn't make so much money, I wouldn't do drugs. So I quit the job and realized I still had a drug problem, and now I don't have any money. So that was a couple of years of active addiction. Eventually, I got into a rehab. I got clean in the rehab. I got a job. I got an apartment, and my life started to turn around. I did some of the basic stuff. I went to counseling. I went to a 12-step meeting. I got a job, and I did all that. After about 2 years, I got a letter from the rehab I went to, and they said, "Listen, we have an internship program. If you're interested in it, we can get you certified as an addiction counselor."
Okay.
For the state of New York, and it's a 13-month course. Now, I've always identified myself as not that smart because I wasn't so book smart. I wasn't great in math or in any of that stuff. But I got this internship. I said, well, how am I going to do an internship? I got to move upstate New York and do this internship, and they're not going to pay me. So you know what? I wrote letters to people, and I was able to get donations to pay for my gas, my food, and my rent for the first 2 or 3 months in the internship. And then eventually they offered me some evening work on the adolescent unit. So the internship was 2 hours of classroom in the morning, 6 hours of experiential work on the unit. And that is the way that worked for me in learning. And I think the disservice I got growing up in the educational system was how they taught. they taught in a way that wasn't conducive for me to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But this internship proved, boy, 2 hours of classroom, 6 hours of experiential, so I can practice what I just learned and know how to do it, versus sit in classroom all day and then they give you homework at night. I was so spaced out with ADHD or ADD that I couldn't remember anything I read anyway. So the only way I got through grade school, junior high school, and high school was basically memorizing or remembering what somebody said
Mm-hmm.
and what they did in front of me, and then guessing the answers. And I guessed enough right answers to get a 60 in most things and just barely pass.
Yeah.
So, the amazing thing about my life has been, if we're going to look at the dollar amounts, I've made as much money as any PhD or MD or master's level clinician, and I have a high school diploma. But I am a bright individual that's creative, and I don't think things through the way other people do, in that I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time figuring something out. I'm going to just do it.
Yeah.
Like, when somebody told me about the beekeeping, I just ordered some beehives, got some bees, and talked to this guy. Hey, so what do you think about, what do I need to do? He just showed me what to do in, an hour. So now I've got these 5 beehives. Most people, and in the instruction around beehives, is you got to process and learn about bees about a year before you even get a hive.
Wow. You
So,
said it's
so
on
that's
Amazon permanent.
that's another one of my first things. Another guy, this was about, I don't know, 15 years ago. A guy said, "Hey, you want to?" This lady, it was lady. She said, "You want to run an ultra marathon?" And I said, "Okay." And I was running, 5, 10 miles a day. And I said, "Well, what's an ultra marathon?" She said, "Well, it's 155 miles, and we're going to go 155 miles through the Sahara Desert." I said,
Whoa.
155 miles? How do you do that? She said, "Oh, we do a marathon a day for 4 days and 58 miles on the 5th day. You want to join us?" I said, "Yes." So I told her yes. I start training for this thing. I said, "There's no way I'm going to be able to finish this race." So
Yeah.
we get to the race day. We wind up in Egypt. We're getting ready to run this race. There's no way I'm going to do 26 miles tomorrow. I got through the 26 miles. The first 18 miles, my feet swelled up so bad that I couldn't even wear my sneakers anymore. And I just happened to bring a pair of Tevas with me. So for 137 miles, I ran the rest of the way in Tevas. And each day that I had to do the race, I said, I can't do this. But you know what? I got up and did it anyway. And
What's a Tiva before you go further? What's a Tiva?
Tevas are those old man sandals that have the
Okay, gotcha.
Velcro. That I'm an old man now, but I think in my mind like a young man. So I call it old man
Yes,
sandals,
I know
but they're
exactly
like
what you're talking about now. Yes,
they're the
okay.
sandals for guys like me. You
Yeah.
know. So I ran that whole race in the Tevas. The day that we did the last day was the 58 miles. And I told them, I said, listen, they said, oh, you can rest here. I said, if I rest, I'll fall asleep and I'll never
I
get back
won't
up.
go. Yeah, I won't get back up. No.
So I just kept going, and I eventually was able to finish the race. But the organization was the 4 deserts. They go to Egypt, they go to South America, they go to China. If you do those first 3 races first, you get invited to Antarctica. And do you know I was the first Black person to have ever, and that race has been going on for 20 years. And I was the first Black person to ever run. And we were in Africa, and there was no, there
Wow.
were no
And
other
the
Black
Kenyans
people
were
that run
running,
the
huh?
race that time that I did.
Wow.
Back in the 90s, I was reading GQ magazine, and I
Mhm.
was reading this article, Boulder Outdoor Survival School. And they were people that were kind of living in the desert. and the only goal was food, water, and shelter.
Yeah.
And I'm reading this magazine, and I'm talking, I tell my boss, oh, look at this magazine. These people are in the desert, they're doing this, that, and the other. Boy, that sounds exciting. He says, well, why don't you do it? I, never thought about doing it. I said, why not? So I signed up for Boulder Outdoor Survival School. It cost me a couple of $1,000s. People said, you're crazy. You're going to pay money to live in the desert? No. And look for food, water, and shelter? I said, yeah, because that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in going to Las Vegas and staying at a really nice hotel. Nice hotels come a dime a dozen, but you don't get an experience like this unless you actually do it. And after I did that, the following year, I did a primitive living course with the Tarahumara Indians in the mountains of Mexico. And that was a great experience. But I'm talking about all of this in the framework of what recovery is. Recovery from addiction isn't just about going to therapy, counseling, and 12-step meetings. It's about recovering your dreams and living them out. And I think if the description of recovery was larger than going to treatment and 12-step meetings, it would be more appealing to people. Now, I know not everybody's going to want to run an ultra marathon, 155 miles to the desert. Not everybody wants to be a beekeeper. But most people have dreams that are unfulfilled. And if you have an addiction problem, you probably have a whole pile of dreams that are unfulfilled. And the only thing you have to get right to begin to live out those dreams is move towards abstinence and becoming abstinent. So abstinence gets you in the door of recovery, and then you get to do whatever you want when you're there, but you have to figure out a way to get abstinent. Now, I did the route of going to a 30-day treatment program. Maybe somebody wants to do something different. The 30-day treatment program, if you have insurance, is probably the easier, softer way of doing it versus trying to do it in your bedroom or, going to counseling once a week or something like that. But my second job professionally was in an intensive outpatient program. And half of the people in the intensive outpatient program came there through a 30-day program, and others came in off the street. And I don't know that there was any difference around the success rate for the ones that came from the 30-day program or off the street. The ones who engaged in the recovery process and kind of followed the direction were the ones that were successful. These were the ones that may have been doubtful of what the process was, but you know what? I'm going to trust these people. I'm going to trust this guy for a period of time. For me, it was, I'm willing to trust this process for a year. And if it doesn't work for me, I'll go back and smoke crack. I was able to put together a year, and it worked for me, and I continued on. So I have 36 years clean now, and I have no reason or want to go back. But my recovery process has had some basic ingredients. The first one is abstinence. The second one is I have to get with some like-minded people that have a similar goal. But I also have to start to take responsibility for my life and my recovery. And I can't blame anybody else for me not being able to do the things that I want to do and I need to do. Listen, they say in life, you can be anything you want in life. Okay, I don't want to be an astronaut. So I could never become an astronaut because I have no desire to be an astronaut. But 3 years ago, I wanted to feed live hyenas. And I did that. I went to Ethiopia and I fed live hyenas. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to climb Machu Picchu. I did that. I wanted to climb Kilimanjaro, and I did that. I wanted to climb Mount Meru, and I did that. So everything that I've wanted to do, I've been able to do. I was in Ethiopia, in the hottest place on earth, right? And I met these people in a village, and the guy says, the dust storm came and blew our school over. So they don't have a school anymore. I said, oh, if I ever come back to Ethiopia, I'll bring you some school supplies. That was in June. Later that year in August, I'm looking at my pictures. I said, I got to go back to Ethiopia. I'm just drawn to this place. But I said, oh, shit. I told this guy I'm going to bring him some school supplies. I got to get this guy some school supplies. So I said, well, let me come up with a fundraiser. I'll raise $1,800. I'll buy some school supplies and I'll bring it over to to Ethiopia. So I did this fundraiser. Within a week, I had raised $3,000. Within 3 months, I had raised $30,000. So I said, without much thought, let me just fill out the application in the IRS for a 501c not-for-profit. Filled it out. It got approved. I got my not-for-profit. So again, it wasn't about me getting a committee and people, let's think about this thing and we're going to put this together. We're going to do this and we're going to create this not-for-profit. I just, whether I was naive, I said, screw it. Let me just find the application. I'll fill it out, and it got approved. So now I was there initially in June. By the following December, I'm back in Ethiopia with 9 huge suitcases that I'm bringing back to the school. And I was able to bring enough supplies for 3 schools. But the one thing that really got me going around this, and I'm going to tell you, this is for everyone. When that guy told me a dust storm blew over his school, and I got to tell you, I saw these kids, these just innocent kids. They were dirty, their clothes ripped. These are kids that their parents, their grandparents, their children, their grandchildren, great-grandchildren will never experience in a lifetime a glass of ice water. I said, there is a need here, and I can't ignore this need. My job is to respond to it. And I started that not-for-profit, and I got those kids school supplies. I've been back 3 other times, and I bought computers, other school supplies. And this last time, I got another bright idea.
Uh-oh.
I said, how do we incentivize these kids to come to school? Let's keep it simple. Food. We got to have a lunch program.
Yeah.
So we got to put lunch. But how am I going to do a lunch program? What am I going to keep bringing them food? No. So I got them 300 chickens. So they lay eggs, and every kid, and I made it very clear to those people at the school. I said, these kids should be getting 2 eggs a day for lunch. Now, these are the kids that may get 2 eggs in a year. Now they're getting 2 eggs for lunch every day, 5 days a week. And I don't care that the culture doesn't offer that in general, but I made it my request. If I'm going to help you, this is what I'm asking you to do. Get them that stuff. So I think we as human beings, as people, need to respond to the needs of others. That we're not on this planet alone. And, maybe there's some self-caring reasons why I do it, because maybe when I'm down and out, somebody will be there for me and provide something. And I'm thinking, listen, if I get down and out, I hope somebody really lays out the red carpet for me, gets me a nice place to live and this, that, and the other. Who knows what's going to happen? But I respond when I see there's a need versus ignoring it or pretending like I don't see it. And yeah, listen, I'm not handing out money on the streets to every homeless person.
Yeah, no.
But I'm talking about in a very general way. That's what I do. And so recovery has afforded me the opportunity to respond to my value system. When I was in active addiction, I couldn't respond to my value system. But in recovery, I can. Again, I've expanded my understanding of what recovery is because travel, adventure, exercise, things like that are important to me. Also, engaging and practicing spiritual principles, honesty, integrity, perseverance, compassion, all of those things, trust, really work for me. Earlier this year, I decided I wasn't going to work and I was going to take some time off to do some things. So I increased my journaling, meditation. I took a permaculture course. I did some grounding work. I'm walking around barefoot so I can feel the earth. I increased my exercise. I went to Africa and I climbed to Mount Muru. And I wrote a book. And again, with the book, I was a little insecure. You know, how am I going to write a book? What do I know? And I realized, well, I know my life, and everybody's telling me I'm an interesting person. So why not put it down on paper? So I was able to work with a coach, and I wrote a book. I started in January, and the book was finished in June, 6 months. I have a friend that's writing a book. She's still been writing the book now in 3 years. I used another method that really works for me because sitting down with a pen and a piece of paper, writing 5,000 pieces of paper wasn't going to work for me. So I recorded everything and then had it transcribed into words, and I put my book together that way. And it's been pretty successful. I've just sold my first 500 copies, and the book has been out for a month. The name of the book is The Recovery Roadmap, A Guide to Freedom and Adventure. And for me, recovery has offered me freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Recovery is not always from drugs and alcohol. I also had to recover from my parents and what was taught to me, right? Because my parents and grandparents were from a different time. So, I mean, when I grew up, get a job at the post office or the railroad or the city, you had to get a job with a pension. Well, that was true for my grandparents and my parents because of what was going on with Black people then, and they were looking for security.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and got a job at the post office. I did not like working at the post office. Although it paid me well, it wasn't a difficult job, but it was just boring. The mail came in, the mail came out. As a child, when I was in school, the person that I liked the most in school, I respected the most, that I was most interested in, was the guidance counselor.
Mm-hmm.
So I was naturally drawn to counseling. So when the internship came up for me and was offered to me, I jumped on it because that's what I wanted to do. Listen, when I completed the internship, it wasn't like I really knew how to be a counselor, but I had the basic understanding of what counseling was. I had the personality for it, and I was naturally therapeutic. So over time, I got really good at it. And I had been working in the field now for about 34, 35 years, and have really created a great reputation for myself. But again, this year, I really wanted to take a break from that kind of work and find out what else there was for me. People say, Michael, you're crazy. You stopped working for 9 months. You didn't work. Oh, yeah, listen, I worked a little bit, but I cut everything in half, and I had faith, and I trusted the process that, Michael, I've come this far. and everything has been okay? Why can't I do a little bit more and trust that things are going to be okay? So over the year, I was able to get jobs that paid me a bulk amount of money that was 3 or 4 days. So I didn't have to work all the time. I could write my book. I could exercise. People are like, well, what are you exercising all day? Yeah, because I wanted to. And
Mhm.
this body has to last me a lifetime. And I'm not going to squander it, and put all my effort into showing up for work and sleeping all day. So I made a serious effort into working out. So I work out, I don't know, I do about three different, I do this strength training once a day. I do
Mhm.
yoga once a day, and I either cycle or climb once a day. So I do 3 separate workouts a day, and I do that 6 to 9 times days in a row. And I don't take days off because I know there'll be naturally days that I don't want to do it. So I don't want to plan a day off. I just, when my body says, Michael, it's time to take a day off, I take a day off. And that's what I do. I started a Black men's journal group.
Okay.
So I meet with these guys. We meet every other week and we have a journal book that we use. We review the journal book. We review our journal writings and share with each other, to kind of develop a relationship that all of us have agreed we haven't been able to find out in the streets or out in our neighborhoods, where people tend to be superficial in your relationships with each other, but you don't really get deep. And especially as a group of Black men getting deep. Now, you can go to a 12-step meeting and people raise their hand and share, but you can't really give feedback on it. You can't go back and forth on it. And this group gives us an opportunity to do that. So that's a really good thing that I've been able to do. Um, Let me give you another first, maybe for your audience. I climbed an active volcano.
Was it
Um,
hot?
I got to tell you, that place was hot. I went to the hottest place on earth in Ethiopia. And let me
Uh,
tell you something, it was 120 degrees at night. It was so hot, it was just impossible to go to sleep. You could not go to sleep. You couldn't take off any more clothes than you took off, and you're still hot.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It was pretty tough. Um, so I did write this book, and I was really proud to be able to dedicate, acknowledge 2 mentors that I had, that really, they gave me their business in New York. They said, Michael, you run it. And
Mhm.
they gave me supervision around it. They were both licensed social workers. They gave me supervision around it, but they let me run it. And they
Okay.
trusted that I could run it. And I ran it. I did a good job, but I didn't always feel good. I felt insecure, like an imposter. But I've realized now that we grow over time. And even though, yeah, you know, I don't know, I'm in recovery for whatever period of time, in my 60s, I'm starting to feel the confidence, the security that I would have hoped for in my 40s and 50s. But you know what? I didn't have it. It was all a front. I don't know that it was all a front, but I wasn't, but I can really feel it now. And I don't say like I got regrets because I didn't do it then. Back then I was doing something else and I was enjoying life, even though maybe if I look at it now, I was a phony or whatever in
Yeah.
certain aspects. But now it's all matching up. My insides match my outsides. I'm not perfect. I still have a lot of areas to grow in, but I certainly have come a long way in a short period of time. So,
That's so
you
cool.
know, Yeah, so I don't know, that's my story. I don't know if you have any questions
Oh
or what
gosh,
else. Yeah.
I got a big old book of questions and sheets. I mean, this is incredible, and I thank you for sharing, especially when I used to run a homeless services 50-bed facility here in Denver, Colorado. And when we talked about recovery, everybody always wanted to talk about the step plans and what we're going to do in therapy and the group meetings. And I am so incredibly happy that you shed some light on recovery isn't going to a class once a week and then thinking that you're cured. You
Let
know?
me let me tell you, when I went to Colorado
uh-huh.
4 years ago, part of my recovery was climbing Mount Vale,
Okay.
but also downtown Denver. I forgot that area. There's a gym there's a climber gym there.
Yes. Yeah.
So I went because I have a climber at home, and I said, you know what? I want to experience it in the live studio. So I went to the live studio and experienced my climber machine. I'm on they have a contest every month, a competition every month, and I'm on the competition this month, and it's usually a 40 or 50,000 foot climb. And I'm
Mhm.
66 years old. So I'm competing with 30, 40, and 50-year olds. And I got to tell you, every month, I'm in the top 5. So I'm doing good. And last year, I self identified myself, I labeled myself, I titled myself a professional athlete. So the NFL didn't do it, ESPN didn't do it, I did it. I don't need anybody else to tell me I am a professional athlete. And
I
I've
love it.
never played on a team before, and I've never been paid for my athleticism, but here I am, professional athlete. So maybe I'm your first self-proclaimed professional athlete on
Self-proclaimed.
your show.
Well, I got to reach back into the day because I'm 60 now, so I got to go back into my athletic days.
Mhm.
But we got to get you sponsored. When I think of the Nike Just Do It, uh, that is you. You're not like let's think about it, let's talk about it, let's analyze it. You're like let's do it, and you actually do it. I got to figure out who I got to send this video to so that we can get you some
But
shoes
the
so you
thing
don't have
is,
to do the
if
marathon.
you don't just do it, there's a tendency to talk yourself out of it.
Of course, of
And
course. And then when it
yeah,
hurts a little bit, it's even worse, right? It's like if I sit down, I'm not getting back up, and
uh-huh.
we got to get this over to somebody who can get you some of those that gear because you should
Yeah.
never do 159 miles in some sandals. I don't
Mm.
care who it is, or 58 miles, or 130, however many you told me you're doing. And
Mm.
I was just as you were going through some of these things, and I was thinking about some of my life and the things that I do because I grew up here in Denver, so I too never traveled to the South. I took 18 black men to Birmingham, Selma, and Montgomery last January, and we did a civil rights tour. And I went on the tour 1 year before. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea the South was like people who just traveled from the north to the south. And I was like,
Mhm.
and so I grew up swimming, and I was a lifeguard at a beach and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And I'm just thinking about all the things you do. Then I thought about your book, and I have a I'm only 5 years younger than you, so I'm not it's like we grew up in the same era,
Mhm.
but they
Yeah.
labeled me special education or special needs
Mhm.
in elementary school because I wasn't reading, I wasn't keeping up, and I wasn't doing anything that they told me I should be doing, and I wasn't learning in a way they thought I should be learning, and so I was behind, and they put me in these trailers, and I didn't go to mainstream classes with everybody, and so I wasn't going to college. I was going to go to stunt school. I wanted to be a stunt man, and so I was going to do that.
Mhm.
I just happened to be a pretty good athlete, and my
Mhm.
mom begged me. She like, if you just go to college, we got scholarship offers here. If you just go to college, I will buy you a Jeep when you
Mhm.
graduate from college. And right, you can kind of imagine that for me. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go to school for 4 years just so I can have a cheat.
Mm-hmm.
What else am I doing anyways, right? I'll
Mm-hmm.
postpone stuff school, but I went to school in California so I could be close to Hollywood. Ended up going through, an education system, and I'm doing a talk next week at a place in Texas. And part of my speech is I didn't realize that I wasn't this special ed student until I was doing my PhD, and I'm doing it, and I'm go to the disability office where I've been getting my accommodations throughout all this thing, right? I get accommodations to take longer to take tests. I get, longer to write. I get writing
Mm-hmm.
help, all that kind of stuff. And I realized this at the end of my issue when I go to the disability office and they say, we got nothing. We don't have anybody who can help you at this point. You've reached this level where you're at the place that I'm like, oh, I guess I'm
Uh-huh.
really not that special ed kid that they labeled me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look at you, Michael, and I go, what? You've done everything that I've done through a system, but on your own. And
Yeah,
so how do we get you that honorary doctorate or whatever it is? I mean, yeah.
yeah.
How you
And
did it, right?
and again, I am a high school graduate that got certified in addiction counseling, and I was good at it. All you have to do is find out something that you're good at. I got to tell you, I was, when you're telling me about stuntman, I said, boy, I wonder if he ever became a stuntman. I mean, I was more interested in you becoming a stuntman, than going to college. That sounded interesting and exciting to me.
Yeah, it's
And,
what I wanted
like
to do.
when I was younger, I wanted to be an actor, but I
Okay.
realized that I can't act. As soon as you put me in front of a camera in that way, I become stiff and unnatural. But I can do this. I can do this all day long. And how I prep for things like this is I just do, 45-minute to a 60-minute workout, and then I'm on fire.
So,
I can talk till the cows come home.
mhm,
After a great workout. And also for me, a great workout really helps with depression.
mhm,
I think yes, I have experienced depression in my life, and I have tried antidepressants in the past. They worked, but I also realize that exercise works. So as
mhm.
long as I exercise, I don't need to take a pill or an antidepressant. I just need to exercise. And again, this body has to last me a lifetime. And um, one of the things that I'm really understanding, and I want everybody to know, when opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare. So we need to engage in the preparation now, because opportunity and tragedy is right around the corner. And
Mhm.
if you're not prepared for it, it
Yeah.
will overwhelm you. And so my journaling, my meditation, my exercise, my engagement with people are all my preparation for what's happening next. And I just really believe that. And I think oftentimes people are not prepared for life and what life has to offer them or take away from them.
Yeah. It's like they're not ready to take advantage of, I have, I just finished a book called Be Do Have. So it's becoming the person that God put you on this earth to be,
Mm-hmm.
instead of trying to do it and have it first. And we spend so much time having it. How do we become like, are we prepared for the opportunity when it shows up and says, okay, we're ready to run an ultra marathon? Well, if you hadn't even been running 5, 10, any miles at all, now you're not prepared to take advantage of that opportunity that comes out,
Right.
and then to
Mm-hmm.
be able to do it. And
Yeah.
so much of our time is so stuck thinking about what we want to do, that we don't actually ever get those experiences. Like you talked
Mhm.
about those kids in the pool, right? They'd run and jump in the pool, but
Mhm.
there's probably the opportunity was the why, right? The why is going to
Mhm.
teach you how to do this right. All you want to
Mhm.
do is jump in the pool. Well, I can
Yeah.
remember when I was a lifeguard at the water park, I had all these little black children jumping in the wave pool, and I'm in there all day saving them because they don't know how to swim. Right?
Uh-huh.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what is going on here?
Mhm.
Where why don't you go take a few sips? Then this experience is going to be fun, and you're not
Mhm.
having a near death experience every time you get in the
And
water.
you know what it is though? Listen, I'm not a parent, but I do have a parent,
Uh-huh.
and my mother made sure we learned to swim. From kindergarten to 5th grade, we went to private school. My mother filled out the forms and got us scholarships into the private schools. I got to tell you, if I did not go to those private schools, I never would have graduated high school. I would be in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
would have no teeth. I would be acting and looking like all of those people, not all of the people that I grew up, but some of them. I Part of what gets me in the door in a lot of places is I speak well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my voice and my speaking ability gets me through the door. Listen, a lot of people talk to me, and just in the work that I do, they call me doctor. They just assume I'm a doctor. I
You
talk
are. You
apparently
are.
like a doctor, and it gets me through the door. And if I didn't have the parent that I had,
Uh-huh.
listen, my mother went to nursing school. She became a nurse, and she worked all the time. She worked 11 to 7 and
Mm-hmm.
slept during the day. And we lived with my grandparents. So my grandparents kind of helped raise us. My grandmother was tough. She
Yeah.
didn't play around with nothing. I'm giving an example of her. Like if we were at her house every Saturday, we had to, you know, clean the kitchen floor. So my grandmother was like, "There's only one way to do it: on
Mm-hmm.
your hands and
On
knees
your
with a
knees. Yeah.
bucket, with Ajax and a scrub brush."
Yep.
She didn't believe in mops.
Ooh, no, because you can't
She
get them
didn't.
together in
My,
corners of the mouth,
I got
right?
to tell you, you can't get a clean. And listen, my grandmother didn't believe in showers. She said
Oh God.
you can't get clean in the shower. Your body needs to soak.
Oh God.
So you could only. She wouldn't get a shower in a house. You'd have to get a bit
In the
bathtub.
dirty water, right?
Yeah, and dirty water, because she wasn't going to waste water either. So whichever one of me and my brothers got in the bathtub first got the clean water, and the rest of them just soaked in the dirty water.
Yep.
But there was a rigid way to do things, and I got to tell you, that rigidity also saved my life because it prevented me from doing some of the things that I could have would have done in my
Mm-hmm.
active addiction and in my young life, that I just didn't do because she knew what was right and what was wrong, and I there were some things I just couldn't bring myself to do because of her teachings. So I give a lot of um, um, reverence to my grandmother in literally saving my life.
Oh, that is so cool.
You
Well,
know.
Michael, I want to. We got about 6 or 7 minutes left, and I want to make sure we talk about some of the things you want to, especially your book. I have a community that I'm starting. It's called Becoming the Person Universe. And if you go to becomingtheperson.com, if you're here watching it, go there. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to do a fireside chat that I would love to have you on, and we just talk about recovery. And we talk
Mhm.
about your book and the things that you've learned in recovery. And there's so many people that are out there that are believing that maybe if I just do a little bit of therapy, if I just, like you said, you were able to go, it's cheaper, I'm making too much money to have this addiction. And, and then you realize it has nothing to do with the money. It has to
Mhm.
do with my mindset and what I'm doing. And so
Mhm.
maybe we can come back and circle back and just have people be able to ask us questions. And, I'm putting
Sure.
you on the spot here because I'm going to make you come on anyways, because I
Mhm.
can't wait to have that conversation with you. But before
Mhm.
we leave today, how do people get a hold of you? How do they get to your book? What else do you want to make sure that we get in our time? This has been so amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can go on Instagram, Coach Michael Herbert on Instagram and TikTok. I'm also on Instagram as Michael A. Herbert. I'm on Recovery Guide on Facebook. Um, my book is called, I don't, it'll probably show up backwards here, but
No, it's got it. Good. Perfect.
it's the
Recovery Guide.
Recovery Roadmap, a guide to freedom and adventure. And you can get that on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. But I would ask if anybody gets it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble that you'd be willing to write a review.
Yeah, it's so
And
important.
and just let me know your thoughts about it, but let other people know, because this is an important book for people to read and get a deeper, broader understanding of what recovery is and what life has to offer after drugs. And let me also include in my drug thing, nicotine is a drug. And if you're
Hello.
smoking and vaping, it's more people die of nicotine related deaths than crack or heroin. So don't get fooled by, oh, I don't want, I can't give up everything at once. You can give up everything at once. It gets out of your system in about 3 or 4 days, and then the rest is all psychological. And one of the things that I also have learned, psychologically, it is painful to
Mhm.
not do something you want to do. And this is where meditation comes in. Meditation will help you deal with difficult things without having to take a drag off a cigarette or a vape or take a pill over. But meditation will help you to tolerate the pain that's going to come in life on some level anyway. We can't hide from pain. We're going to experience it at some times. And sometimes a 10-minute meditation, some deep breathing, and focusing on the here and now is all you need.
Thank you for bringing that up. And one of the other things I'd love to just kind of talk about just for a couple seconds is, if you are a person who has somebody in your life who is struggling with addiction, and you can't understand the why, you can't understand what's going on, you can't, well, I can't believe he just does that, I tell him to quit and he just doesn't quit, or we send him to a 10-day recovery and he comes out and he gets going again. A book like this and having conversations with Michael like this will help you understand what it truly takes and the mindset of somebody who is in addiction and why it's so
Absolutely.
difficult, right? I mean,
And
it's
and, and
not just the people that are have addiction, right? Go
right.
ahead.
And we have to allow people to experience the consequences of their choices. So if they go to
Mm,
rehab and they get out and go use again, maybe the best thing isn't to take them in.
yeah, absolutely.
Maybe let them, don't do for others what they can do for themselves. And
Ooh,
don't think
hello.
so little of people that they can't figure it out. Because there are hundreds of thousands of people who are willing to help your loved one. It doesn't have to be you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let them go to a 12-step meeting. Let them go to a community center that has free counseling, this, that, and the other. Let them go to a homeless shelter. Let them go to a food kitchen. You know, let them experience, let them experience they made that choice.
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely.
until they can show some consistency in change, maybe you don't take them back in. But here's the other thing that I will say: I cannot tell you what to do.
Of course.
You
Yep.
have to do what you think is best. I think one of the things that scares people the most is, if I don't save them, if I don't do this or that, they're going to die out there, or they're going to kill themselves, or something really bad is going to happen. If that were true, half of the population would be dead.
Yep.
So the worst case scenario probably isn't going to happen. Here's what I ask people to ask themselves. What's the worst thing that'll happen if you don't help? What's the best thing that would happen if you don't help? And what's the most likely thing that'll happen if you don't help?
I love that.
And then you can come up with the answer for that, of what to do next.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being part of the Journey Freedom podcast today. If this is your first one and you're going, wow, this is good stuff, go ahead and hit the subscribe, hit the notifications. We have so many shows with just incredible people that are talking just like we are. I'm having Michael back. We're going to be part of the fireside chat. You want to check out Becoming the Person universe and the becomingtheperson.com. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be something that's going to help you just go down that journey of, hey, maybe you haven't been hitting your goals, or maybe there's things that you've been wanting to do that you just don't know how to do it. Like, hey, maybe you wanted to run an ultra marathon. Hey, let's talk to somebody who's done it and says this is what it took. Now, I'm not saying you need to do it in sandals, and I'm not saying you need to do it in the desert. But at some point, it's something you want to do. It's something that absolutely you should have the ability to be able to do. And so, Michael, it's been a pleasure. It has been so fun to have you on. I can't wait to go back and check. I got all my notes here. I'm thinking of all the things I got to go do now in my life, because I have till I'm 66, till I'm your age, in order to get all the stuff you've done, so I can show you up a little bit. But
it's crunch time. It's crunch time.
Three workouts a day and all that kind of stuff I got to go do now. Yeah, so that's crazy. Do you have any one final thought that you would love to just share with everybody before we leave?
There is a solution. There is hope. You just have to find it. And there are people who are willing to help you. I'm certainly willing to help anyone who asks, and do the best that I can to maybe put someone in the right direction.
Well,
that's all I have. Yeah, thank you.
Love it. Hey, guys, don't forget you're God's greatest gift. He loves you, Lounge. I can't wait to see you on the next one. You guys have an amazing, awesome, just incredible day. Hey, remember how Michael told us at the beginning, he's in love with life. And you can be too. So just make sure you check out his book, and we'll look forward to talking to you again. See you soon.
All right.